Hello. So today we are gonna look at business objectives. Business objectives. We have two theories. We have the traditional theory of firm and the alternative theory of firm. So traditionally, if I ask you, what do you think will be the reason you want to start a business or have a business? Most people say profit, and that's the traditional objective. And that is what the traditional theory of firm tells us. They say that profits are businesses are there to profit maximize. So, but however, if you heard me correctly, I said profit maximize. So not just profit, but within this cloud of possible profit, find the maximum point where we can get the most. What do I mean? Well, let me show you. We have this, the eye of Thondera. No, it's not. It's the difference between total costs and total revenue. So you can see total costs down and then going up. The assumption here is that they eventually first start going down as we gain economies of scale. So we're maximizing the utility of our fixed costs. We're making the most out of our machines. So we're spreading the costs of our machines. Like, let me give you an example. This is a mold, and this will be a fixed cost. So the cost of this mold was quite cold, made out of aluminium. It's something like £5,000. Now, to spread the cost, you need to make a lot of bottles out of this, so that you can spread the costs over more bottles. And that's what I meant by reducing the cost through mechanical economies of scale. We're spreading the cost of our fixed costs that do not vary with output. However, eventually they start going up, and this happens for a variety of reasons. Sometimes the manager just has too many people that he has to manage, too many subordinates, and hence he is not able to do it properly. And people might just be sleeping at work or not necessarily producing what they should be doing or what they're expected to. Communication, sometimes one function does not speak with another function. So marketing at times might not speak necessarily with a factory. So the marketing plans do not realize, and all the time was wasted planning a great marketing campaign when the factory could not produce that type of bottle or the desired product. So that explains or gives us some reasoning behind this downwards sloping total cost curve and then an upward sloping total cost curve. And then we have our total revenue curve, which goes up and then it kind of just goes flat. And it follows the theory of a little bit like demand. It's total revenue increases and eventually the market will be saturated. So you're not able to sell more than you are selling already. A little bit like Coca-Cola is everywhere, right? So if you are in the business to sell Coca-Cola, you're like, well, where are you going to sell it? So it's kind of saturated the market. So it's up there. And you are not going to really see much growth other than the normal demographic growth that we get year on year as people go from studying to working and spending. Okay, so narrowing it down, traditional theory of firm aims to profit maximize. And we can see here the difference between the revenue, the amount of money coming in from sales, and the total costs is your profit. So if I tell you that I buy this pen for £4 and I sell it to you for £1, I ask you, well, what is my total revenue? You're thinking, I don't know. Well, you should, because revenue is just quantity times price. And if I sold you one pen for £1, then that's the revenue. It's £1. So it's the amount coming in from sales. So the amount of money coming in from sales, if I take away the costs, then I get my profit. So all this area here is our profit. Now you can see, we can produce quite a whole range of, well, not range, but quite a number of products and make profit. So, but among all this, there's one, the one and only Q1, and that is the profit maximizing point. That's where we have the biggest difference between total cost and total revenue. Yeah, that's what any business worth their brand wants and should want, I suppose. It's selfish there. And that equals the point where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So that's just the marginal cost is the cost of making one extra unit, and the marginal revenue, well, is the extra revenue you get from selling one more unit. And when those equal, then that technically should equal your profit maximizing point. It's called the equimarginal condition. I always think of doesn't matter. Equine, like a horse, that reminds me of the equimarginal condition. Up to you. You can use whatever you want to remember. So that's the idea of traditional theory of firm, to profit maximize, to make the most money possible. However, there is another theory called the alternative theory of firm. And this is seen as, well, profit maximizing is not necessarily what all businesses are aiming for. Look at startups. They might be looking just to break even. And that is the point where your revenue covers your cost. And that will be a very important point, a point where you might want to open that champagne bottle to celebrate that you are able to cover your costs. So that's, it could be an objective. Having said that, there's other objectives. We have, this Q4, Q3. You're wondering, what are those? Or maybe not, but I'll tell you anyway. So Q3 is the point where you can make the most quantity and not incur losses. You can see there, it's also a break-even point. It's the point where you make the most quantity, however, without making losses. So if you're aiming for growth, you want to overcrowd the competition, you want to have your drinks everywhere, and make sure Coca-Cola has no space where to sell, then why not aim for Q3? And then you will overcrowd those shelves, and competitors are not going to have space where to sell. So there's an option there. Or you just want to grow, you want to make your product well known, so you're not concerned with profit, but you just want to make sure the people have access to your products. So you aim for that big, large quantity of production. Where there's no profit, I'm afraid, it's just breaking even. That's an option. And then you have this one here, Q3, and that is the highest point. Well, it should be the highest point of the total revenue, the amount of money coming in from sales. And this could be an objective for a manager. If an owner employs a manager to run its business, he might put an incentive and say, hey, look, you might get a bonus if our revenue hits, above £1 million this year. So the manager is not going to care about profit maximizing or quantity or breaking even. He's going to focus on, Q4 right there, where you have the most revenue coming in. And it's not necessarily the same point as the other ones. It could be a different point of quantity. So that's another alternative objective for a firm. So we looked at traditional objective, profit maximizing, and that's the biggest difference between total cost and total revenue. And that's also when the marginal cost equals the marginal revenue, hence the equimarginal condition, versus the alternative objectives, which might be survival, when you're looking at breaking even when you start your business, or growth when you're looking at producing large quantities and also breaking even, and or maybe revenue sales maximization, when you want to have the most revenue from your sales, especially in the time where you lack liquidity. You might think of aiming for total revenue maximization, so you have more cash flowing into your company, not profit but cash. Good. So I have 6 more minutes. Whoa, okay. Right. So why do businesses want to grow? Why are we looking at an alternative objective other than profit? Well, there's things that come along with growth. And one is, once you overcrowd your competitors, you can then focus on profit, as you will not have competition. Another reason could be economies of scale. When you look at large quantities, you have your costs and your quantities here. As you increase the quantity you produce, then your costs tend to go down because you gain economies of scale, such as spreading the costs of machinery. If a machine costs £20,000 and you only make one item out of it, you're gonna have to sell it for £20,000 to break even. But if you make 20,000 items out of that machine, then only selling each of £1 will cover your fixed costs. So what is the moral of that story? That the higher the quantity produced, the more you lower your cost per unit, at least your fixed cost per unit. Also, the more you produce, you might gain purchasing economies of scale. You might be able to buy those raw materials at a cheaper price because you're buying big numbers, big quantities. Eventually, you might become the only buyer, and you can gain monopoly power when you're the only buyer in the market. So hence, you might be able to dictate the price you're buying at. That happened to my dad, actually. He sells his blueberries, and there was only like 1 or 2 buyers. So hence they were dictating the price, and they could lower the prices. And if he didn't sell to them, where was he going to sell? Okay, so benefits of selling large quantities. Well, selling large quantities, economies of scale. You reduce your cost per unit. However, the disadvantages are the internal diseconomies of scale, and those are lack of communication between departments. They don't speak to each other, so work might be duplicated, or you might have too many people doing the same task, or you have things like managerial diseconomies of scale. You have one manager, but he has so many subordinates, he can't really look after them, and they might just go around doing whatever they want, and nobody's there observing them or making them accountable, so hence they're not productive. We can have lack of organization in a business. Again, it gets too big. They're not really aiming to be efficient anymore, because I guess they feel, what's the word, complacent with what they're doing. So you start incurring those diseconomies of scale. So that's one of the downsides when I guess sometimes you're aiming for growth beyond certain points of control. Good. So when it comes to the next stage, when it comes to business objectives, is looking at the size of the business. And you measure the business size by a variety of things. You can almost say anything other than profit. If you say profit, you get a 0. But if you say things like number of employees, number of outlets, shops, value of assets, the value of the company, maybe the market capitalization. Market capitalization is the value of every share times the number of shares there are out there. Not to be confused with ordinary share capital. Ordinary share capital is the value of those shares at the start when they were first floated. So yes, market capitalization will be one of those measurements for the size of the company, the same as the number of employees, the same as the number of machines. So how can we grow the business? There's different ways. Organic, they sell more, they're able to get more revenue, they buy more venues, they buy more machinery. Or we can have an inorganic growth when we're looking at businesses joining. And there's different types. They could do this in a horizontal manner or a vertical manner. So a horizontal manner, if you imagine the horizon in the sea, that's when one business purchases or joins another. They could either have a takeover or a merger, and by doing so, they become a bigger company. However, for it to be horizontal, they both need to be at the same stage of the value chain. Let's say Santander purchasing HSBC, or we can have Asda joining Sainsbury's. That will be a horizontal integration. Then we have vertical integration. Vertical integration is when a business joins another at a different stage of the value chain. If we think of the value chain in a vertical line, we have at the top, we have the customer, the consumer. At the bottom, we have the raw materials. So Tate & Lyle, they sell sugar, and they need, for example, they make it out of beetroot here in the UK. So if Tate & Lyle purchases farms where they grow beetroot, then that will be a vertical integration, but backwards, because they're going away from the consumer. Whereas if Tate & Lyle purchases corner shops where they sell sugar, then that'll be forward integration, because they're getting closer to the consumer. Coca-Cola, they don't sell directly to the consumer. They sell to suppliers like Tesco, corner shops. So if Coca-Cola buys Tesco, then, or takes over Tesco, then that'll be a forward vertical integration. On the other hand, Coca-Cola needs little preforms. Let me show you. Such as this, tiny little baby bottles that are made by a company called APPE, Association of Petrol Producers Europe. Now, if Coca-Cola purchases APPE, then there'll be a backwards vertical integration as they're going backwards along that value chain. And those are different ways in which a business can grow. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. Again, some of them with economies of scale, market share, they might be able to control the market, such as the suppliers of tea from Sri Lanka. They could choose who they're going to sell tea to and at what price. So growing in a vertical manner might have its benefits. The same with horizontal integration, as you might be able to control the overall market and gain some monopoly or oligopolistic power by having that horizontal integration. Finally, we have conglomerates. Conglomerates are businesses that join each other, but they do completely different things. Take, for example, Amazon. They own Twitch. They own Audible. So Twitch is a platform where gamers cast their games. Audible is an app where you can listen to audiobooks. Now they're not related, all these businesses, yet Amazon owns them. So they have a conglomerate. So they can purchase other businesses to grow, but they don't have to be in the same sector or doing the same thing. And that's a conglomerate. And those are the key topics within business objectives. I hope you find this helpful. Have a good day.